A child's safety is in the hands of their guardian, but what if that trust was shattered in the most shocking way? Watch as this teacher uncovers a dark secret, one that no one saw coming. Before we dive in, comment where you're watching from. Hit like and subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories. Let's get into it. The school bell rang at Lincoln Elementary in Boise, Idaho. It was 3:15 p.m., and the hallways filled with the sound of children's footsteps and chatter. Parents lined up outside, waiting to pick up their kids after a long day. Among them stood Clara Hensley, a third-grade teacher with 5 years of experience. She watched from the classroom window as the usual crowd gathered. Most kids ran out with smiles, eager to see their families. But one scene outside caught her eye. A small boy named Owen Baxter lingered near the school steps. His dark hair flopped over his eyes as he stared at the ground. Clara knew Owen well. He was quiet but bright, always finishing his work early. Today, though, something seemed off. A woman approached him, tall and thin with a sharp jawline. She wore a long coat and sunglasses, even though the sky was overcast. Owen didn't run to her like the other kids did with their parents. Instead, he took a slow step back. Clara leaned closer to the window. Her classroom overlooked the pickup area, giving her a clear view. Years of teaching had sharpened her ability to spot trouble. Kids sometimes got shy or tired, but this was different. Owen's shoulders tensed, his hands clenched into tiny fists. The woman bent down, saying something Clara couldn't hear. Owen shook his head, then followed her toward a grey van parked across the street. Clara's stomach twisted. Something about this didn't feel right. She grabbed her jacket from the chair and slipped it on. The other teachers were busy tidying their rooms, but Clara couldn't shake the image of Owen's hesitant steps. She told herself she was overreacting. Maybe he was just upset about a bad grade. Still, her feet moved toward the door. She decided to step outside and check, just to be sure. As she reached the hallway, she glanced back at her desk. Owen's latest drawing sat there, a picture of a house with a big red X over it. That detail stuck in her mind. Outside, the air was cool and crisp. Clara walked toward the pickup area, keeping her pace casual. She waved at a few parents she recognized, exchanging quick hellos. Her eyes stayed on the grey van. The woman opened the side door, and Owen climbed in slowly. Clara noticed the woman's hand grip his arm a little too tightly. The van's engine started, and it pulled away from the curb. Clara stood there, watching it turn the corner. Her chest felt heavy. She remembered Owen's file. His mother, Laura Baxter, was listed as his primary guardian. Clara had met Laura at parent-teacher conferences. She was a short woman with curly hair and a warm smile. This woman was different. Taller, sterner, unfamiliar. Clara's mind raced. Maybe Laura sent someone else today. It happened sometimes. But Owen's reaction gnawed at her. Kids didn't act that way with people they trusted. Clara pulled out her phone and opened the school's app. It tracked guardian check-ins. She scrolled to Owen's name. The system showed Laura Baxter had checked him out 5 minutes ago. Clara frowned. That didn't add up. She hadn't seen Laura anywhere. The app required a PIN only the registered guardian knew. Someone had used Laura's code. Clara's pulse quickened. She needed to know more. She jogged back inside to the front office. The secretary, Mrs. Patel, was filing papers. Clara explained what she saw, keeping her voice steady. Mrs. Patel checked the system again. Laura's PIN had indeed been used. No other guardians were listed for Owen. Clara asked if they could call Laura to confirm. Mrs. Patel nodded and dialed the number on file. The phone rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. Clara's unease grew. She thanked Mrs. Patel and stepped into the hallway. The school was quieter now, most kids already gone. Clara returned to her classroom and grabbed her keys. She couldn't ignore this. Owen's scared face flashed in her mind. She locked her door and headed to her car in the staff parking lot. The grey van was long gone, but Clara had a hunch. Owen lived 10 minutes away. She'd driven by his neighborhood once when dropping off a class project. Maybe she could catch up. Clara started her car and pulled onto the road. She told herself she was just making sure Owen was safe. If everything was fine, she'd turn back. but deep down she knew something was wrong. Her instincts rarely failed her. As she drove, she kept her eyes peeled for that grey van, determined to find out who had taken Owen and why he looked so afraid. Clara gripped the steering wheel as she navigated the streets of Boise. The late afternoon sun cast long streaks of gold across the road, glinting off parked cars. She kept her speed steady, scanning every intersection for the grey van. Owen's frightened expression stayed vivid in her mind, pushing her forward. She turned onto Maple Avenue, a quiet street lined with modest houses and overgrown trees. This was Owen's neighborhood. She remembered the blue mailbox from that time she dropped off his science project last fall. Her car rolled past a corner store where kids clustered, buying candy after school. No sign of the van yet. Clara's phone sat in the cup holder, silent. She'd tried calling Laura Baxter again on the way, but it went straight to voicemail. That worried her more. Laura was always quick to answer, even during work hours. Clara's thoughts churned. If Laura wasn't with Owen, who was that woman? And how did she get Laura's PIN? A flash of grey caught her eye 2 blocks ahead. The van. It sat parked outside a small house with peeling yellow paint. Clara slowed down, pulling her car behind a pickup truck to stay out of sight. She watched as the tall woman stepped out, her coat flapping in the breeze. Owen climbed out after her, clutching his backpack. The woman locked the van and nudged him toward the house. His steps dragged, like he was walking through mud. Clara squinted, trying to catch details. The woman's sunglasses hid her eyes, but her posture was stiff, almost impatient. She unlocked the front door and pushed Owen inside. The door shut with a heavy thud. Clara's heart raced. This wasn't Owen's address. His file listed 412 Elm Street, not this place. She double-checked her memory. Elm Street was 3 blocks north. Why were they here? She reached for her phone and opened the school app again. Owen's emergency contacts popped up. Besides Laura, there was an uncle listed, Daniel Baxter, with a number but no address. Clara hesitated, then dialed. It rang 4 times before a gruff voice answered. "Yeah, who's this?" Clara explained she was Owen's teacher, asking if he'd picked Owen up today. Daniel laughed, short and sharp. "Nope. Haven't seen the kid in weeks. Laura's the one who handles him." He hung up before Clara could ask more. Her unease deepened. She glanced at the yellow house. The curtains were drawn, but a faint light glowed behind them. Clara needed a plan. Driving away felt wrong, but barging in could make things worse. She decided to call the school principal, Mr. Torres. He picked up on the second ring. Clara kept her voice low, explaining what she'd seen. Owen's hesitation, the strange woman, the wrong house. Mr. Torres listened quietly, then said, "Clara, this sounds serious. I'll call Laura's workplace. You stay put and keep an eye out. Don't do anything risky." Clara agreed and ended the call. She adjusted her rearview mirror, keeping the house in view. Minutes ticked by. A dog barked somewhere nearby. Then, movement. The front door creaked open, and the woman stepped out. She carried a black duffel bag slung over one shoulder. Owen wasn't with her. She climbed into the van and drove off, turning left at the end of the street. Clara's breath caught. Where was Owen? She waited until the van disappeared, then made a quick decision. She grabbed her phone and a notebook from her bag, scribbling the van's license plate. Idaho 7B 409921. She stepped out of her car, locking it behind her. The street was still, kids' voices fading as they headed home. Clara walked toward the yellow house, staying close to the hedges for cover. Her shoes crunched on dry leaves, the sound loud in her ears. At the house she paused by the front window. The curtains blocked most of the view, but a thin gap showed a sliver of the living room. Clara peeked inside. Owen sat on a couch, his backpack beside him. He stared at the floor, hands folded in his lap. No one else was visible. Clara tapped the window lightly. Owen's head jerked up. His eyes widened when he saw her, a mix of relief and fear crossing his face. Clara gestured for him to come to the door. Owen hesitated, glancing around the room, then slid off the couch. He moved slowly, like he was afraid of making noise. Clara stepped to the porch, her pulse pounding. The door opened a crack, and Owen's small voice whispered, "Miss Hensley? Why are you here?" Clara knelt down. Owen, are you okay? Who was that woman? His lip trembled. She said she's my new mum. But I don't know her. She told me not to tell anyone. Clara's stomach dropped. She kept her tone calm. You're safe with me, Owen. Where's your real mum? He shook his head. I don't know. She didn't come home last night. Clara's mind raced. Laura missing. A stranger with Owen. This was bigger than she'd thought. She took his hand. Come with me. We'll figure this out together. Owen nodded, stepping onto the porch just as a car engine rumbled in the distance. Clara tightened her grip on Owen's hand as the distant car engine grew louder. She glanced down the street. Headlights flickered between the trees, heading their way. Her heart thudded. It could be the woman in the grey van coming back. She couldn't risk waiting to find out. Owen, we need to move, she said, keeping her voice steady. He nodded, his small fingers squeezing hers. They hurried off the porch of the yellow house, ducking behind a row of thick bushes along the side yard. The headlights swept past, illuminating the street. It wasn't the van, just a delivery truck dropping off a package at a neighbor's house. Clara exhaled, relief washing over her. She looked at Owen. His face was pale, eyes darting toward the road. It's okay, she whispered. We're safe for now. She led him toward her car, parked a block away behind the pickup truck. The cool evening air brushed against them, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke from someone's chimney. As they reached her car, Clara unlocked the doors and helped Owen climb into the back seat. She slid into the driver's seat, locking the doors with a click. Owen buckled his seatbelt, clutching his backpack like a shield. Clara turned to him. Owen, tell me everything you know about that woman. Anything she said or did. He swallowed hard, his voice shaky. She picked me up from school, said Mum told her to get me, but Mum never said anything about her. She brought me to that house and told me to wait. Then she left with that bag. Clara frowned. The black duffel bag. It had looked heavy, stuffed full. Her mind raced with possibilities. Clothes? Money? Something worse? She pushed the thought aside and started the engine. We're going to find your mum, Owen, I promise. She pulled onto the road, heading toward Elm Street. Owen's real address. Maybe Laura was there, or at least some clue about where she'd gone. The drive took less than 5 minutes. Elm Street was darker with fewer streetlights. Clara parked in front of 412, a tidy brick house with a blue mailbox out front. The windows were black, no lights on inside. She scanned the driveway. Laura's green sedan wasn't there. Clara turned off the engine and faced Owen. Does your mum usually park somewhere else? He shook his head. No, her car's always here when I get home. Clara's chest tightened. Another piece that didn't fit. She grabbed her phone and dialed Mr. Torres again. He answered quickly. Clara, I just spoke to Laura's boss at the bakery. She didn't show up for her shift today. They tried calling her to no answer. Clara's grip on the phone tightened. I've got Owen with me. A woman picked him up from school, someone he doesn't know. I'm at his house now, but Laura's not here. Mr. Torres paused, then said, That's enough for me. I'm calling the police. Stay where you are. Clara hung up and looked at Owen. The police are coming. They'll help us figure this out. He nodded, but his eyes stayed glued to the house. Clara followed his gaze. Something about the stillness bothered her. She decided to check the front door. Owen, wait here. Lock the doors after I get out. If you see anything strange, honk the horn. He agreed, his small hand hovering over the lock button. Clara stepped out, the gravel crunching under her shoes. She approached the house, her breath visible in the chilly air. The front door was solid wood, no window to peek through. She knocked firmly. No answer. She tried the knob. Locked. Around the side, a narrow path led to the backyard. Clara followed it, her phone's flashlight cutting through the shadows. The back door had a small glass pane. She pressed her face to it, peering inside. The kitchen was dim, but she could make out a table with papers scattered across it. A chair lay tipped over. Clara's pulse quickened. She tapped the glass gently. No movement. Then her light caught something on the floor. A red smear near the sink. Her stomach lurched. It looked like blood. She stepped back, fumbling for her phone to call Mr. Torres again. Before she could dial, headlights flashed behind her. She spun around, expecting the police. It was the grey van. The woman stepped out, still wearing her sunglasses despite the dark. She carried the duffel bag, now slung across her chest. Clara froze, her phone slipping in her sweaty hand. The woman tilted her head, spotting Clara by the back door. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice sharp and cold. Clara straightened, forcing calm into her tone. "I'm Owen's teacher. Who are you?" The woman smirked. "His new guardian. Laura's out of the picture." Clara's blood ran cold. She glanced toward her car, hoping Owen stayed hidden. The woman took a step closer, her hand resting on the bag. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Clara backed up, her heel hitting the doorframe. "The police are on their way," she warned. The woman's smirk faded. She turned toward the van, then stopped. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Clara's heart leapt. Help was close. The woman cursed under her breath and bolted for the van. Clara didn't wait. She ran back to her car, banging on the window. Owen unlocked the door, and she jumped inside. "She's leaving!" Owen cried, pointing as the van peeled out. Clara started her engine, ready to follow, but red and blue lights flooded the street. 2 police cars screeched to a stop, blocking the van's path. Officers leapt out, shouting orders. The woman slammed on her brakes, trapped. Clara turned to Owen. "You're safe now. They've got her." He nodded, tears welling in his eyes. As the police surrounded the van, Clara knew this was just the beginning. Whatever that woman had done, whatever had happened to Laura, the truth was about to come out. The police cars formed a tight barrier around the grey van, their lights painting the quiet street in flashes of red and blue. Clara kept her arm around Owen in the back seat of her car, his small frame trembling against her. The officers moved quickly, surrounding the vehicle. One banged on the driver's window, voice firm. "Step out with your hands up!" The woman inside hesitated, her silhouette stiff, then slowly opened the door. She raised her hands, sunglasses still perched on her face, the duffel bag resting on her lap. Clara watched as 2 officers pulled the woman out, patting her down. Another reached into the van, grabbing the bag and setting it on the hood. Owen's breath hitched. "That's her," he whispered. Clara nodded, keeping her tone soft. "They've got her now, Owen. She can't hurt you." He clung to his backpack, eyes locked on the scene unfolding outside. A tall officer with a notepad approached Clara's car. She rolled down her window, the cool night air rushing in. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Grant. You called this in?" Clara explained everything. Owen's strange pickup, the unfamiliar woman, the detour to the yellow house, and the locked home with signs of a struggle. She handed over her phone, showing the license plate number she'd scribbled down. "I think something's happened to his mother, Laura Baxter," she added. Officer Grant jotted notes, his face serious. "We'll check the house. Stay here with the boy." Clara agreed, watching as Grant signaled another officer. They approached the front door of 412 Elm Street, one testing the knob while the other shone a flashlight through a side window. The locked door didn't budge. Grant radioed for backup, then circled to the back with his partner. Clara's eyes flicked to the van. The woman stood cuffed now, arguing with an officer. "I have every right to take him. Check the papers," she snapped, nodding toward the duffel bag. Curiosity tugged at Clara. "Papers?" She glanced at Owen. "Did she show you any papers?" He shook his head. "No, she just said Mum wasn't coming back." Clara's jaw tightened. The officer by the van unzipped the duffel bag, pulling out a stack of documents, a laptop, and a rolled-up blanket. He skimmed the top page, then waved Grant over. The 2 conferred, their voices low but urgent. Clara caught fragments. Custody order, forged signature, bank records. Her stomach churned. This wasn't just a random stranger. This woman had planned something. Clara leaned closer to Owen. "Did she say anything else about your mum?" Owen bit his lip, thinking. "She said Mum signed me over to her, that she didn't want me anymore. But Mum would never do that." His voice cracked, and Clara squeezed his shoulder. "You're right, she wouldn't. We'll find her." The back door of the house creaked open, and Grant emerged, his flashlight beam steady. He waved to Clara. She stepped out, locking Owen safely inside. "What did you find?" she asked as she approached. Grant's expression was grim. There's blood in the kitchen, not a lot but enough to worry us. No sign of Mrs. Baxter. We've got a team coming to process it. Clara's knees weakened. Blood? Grant nodded. Could be from a fight. We're treating this as a crime scene now. He glanced toward the woman, now seated in a patrol car. She's claiming to be Owen's aunt, says Laura gave her custody. Papers look off, though. We'll dig deeper at the station. Clara's mind raced. An aunt? Owen's uncle, Daniel, hadn't mentioned a sister. She told Grant about her call to Daniel, his denial of involvement. Grant wrote it down. Good to know. We'll track him down too. A second police car rolled up, followed by a white van marked Forensics. Officers taped off the yard as specialists in gloves carried equipment inside. Clara returned to her car, sliding into the driver's seat. Owen looked up, eyes wide. Did they find Mum? Clara shook her head gently. Not yet, but they're looking. They found some things in the house. We're getting closer. He nodded, clutching his backpack tighter. Grant tapped on her window again. We need you and the boy at the station for statements. Can you follow us? Clara agreed, starting her engine. As she pulled behind the police car, she glanced at the woman in custody. Her sunglasses were off now, revealing sharp, calculating eyes that stared straight ahead. Clara shivered. This wasn't over. The drive to the Boise police station took 15 minutes. Streetlights blurred past, casting shadows across Owen's face. He stayed quiet, lost in thought. Clara kept her focus on the road, replaying the events of the evening. The blood in the kitchen, the forged papers, the woman's cold confidence. It painted a chilling picture. At the station, they parked in a crowded lot. Officers escorted the woman inside, her wrists still cuffed. Clara helped Owen out, staying close as they followed Grant through the glass doors. Inside, the station buzzed with activity. Phones rang, officers typed at desks, and a coffee machine hummed in the corner. Grant led them to a small room with a table and chairs. Wait here, he said. Someone will take your statement soon. We're running her ID now. Clara sat beside Owen, who fidgeted with his backpack straps. She tried to keep him calm. You did great today, Owen. Telling me the truth helped a lot. He managed a small smile. Thanks, Miss Hensley. A female officer entered, introducing herself as Detective Ruiz. She carried a tablet and a gentle demeanor. I'll start with you, Owen, she said. Can you tell me what happened after school? Owen recounted the pickup, the ride to the yellow house, and the woman's words about his mum. Ruiz typed quickly, nodding. Then she turned to Clara, who detailed her observations, from Owen's hesitation at school to the confrontation at the house. Ruiz listened, her face unreadable. When they finished, Ruiz stood. You've both been incredibly helpful. We're searching the yellow house now and tracking Laura's phone. Sit tight, we'll update you soon. She left, and Clara leaned back, exhaustion creeping in. Owen rested his head on the table, eyes heavy. Clara watched him, determination hardening inside her. Whatever this woman had done, wherever Laura was, Clara wouldn't stop until Owen was safe and the truth came out. The small room in the Boise police station felt stuffy, despite the hum of the air conditioner. Clara sat beside Owen, watching his head bob as he fought sleep on the table. The clock on the wall read 7:32 p.m. They'd been there nearly an hour, waiting for updates. The buzz of the station filtered through the door, officers talking, keyboards clicking, a radio crackling with static. Clara's mind churned over the night's events, the grey van, the yellow house, the blood in Laura's kitchen. Each piece locked into place, forming a puzzle she couldn't yet solve. Detective Ruiz returned, her tablet tucked under her arm. She carried 2 water bottles, handing one to Clara and one to Owen. Thought you might need these, she said, her voice warm but brisk. Owen sat up, taking the bottle with a quiet thanks. Ruiz pulled out a chair and sat across from them. We've got some answers. The woman's name is Vanessa Klein. She's not Owen's aunt. She's a former co-worker of Laura's from the bakery. No family ties. Clara's brows lifted. A co-worker? Why would she take Owen? Ruiz tapped her tablet, pulling up a file. Vanessa was fired 6 months ago for stealing from the register. Laura reported her. Looks like she's been holding a grudge ever since. We found emails on her laptop. Threats to Laura, demands for money. She forged those custody papers to make it look legal. Owen's eyes widened. She wanted money from Mum? Ruiz nodded. Seems that way. We think she planned to use you as leverage. Clara's stomach twisted. Leverage. The word hung heavy in the air. She glanced at Owen, who clutched his water bottle tighter. What about the yellow house? She asked. Ruiz swiped her tablet. It's a rental, leased under a fake name. Vanessa's been staying there. We found Laura's purse inside. Wallet, keys, phone. Her car's in the garage, hidden under a tarp. Clara's breath caught. So Laura was there? Ruiz hesitated, then said, Not anymore, but we're closing in. Owen's voice broke through, small but firm. Where's my mum now? Ruiz leaned forward, her tone gentle. We're tracking her phone's last signal. It pinged near the rental this morning, then went dead. Vanessa's not talking yet, but we've got her on kidnapping charges. She'll crack soon. Clara reached for Owen's hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. They're doing everything they can, Owen. The door swung open, and Officer Grant stepped in, his face tense. Ruiz, we've got something. Neighbor near the yellow house saw Vanessa loading a big suitcase into the van last night. Said it looked heavy, like she was struggling. Ruiz stood, her eyes sharp. A suitcase? Did we check the van's trunk? Grant shook his head. Not yet. Forensics is still on the house. I'll get a team on it. He turned to Clara. Miss Hensley, we might need you to stick around longer. This could get messy. Clara nodded, her resolve firm. We'll stay, whatever you need. Grant left and Ruiz followed, promising to return with news. The room fell quiet again. Owen sipped his water, then looked at Clara. Miss Hensley, why would she hate Mum so much? Clara thought for a moment. Sometimes people let anger twist them up inside. Your mum did the right thing, reporting her. Vanessa couldn't handle that. Owen nodded slowly, processing her words. Minutes stretched into another half hour. Clara paced the room, her shoes tapping the linoleum. Owen doodled on a napkin, drawing a stick-figure family, him, Laura, and a dog they didn't own. The simplicity of it tugged at Clara's heart. She stopped pacing when Ruiz burst back in, breathless. We found the suitcase, in the van's trunk. It's got blood on it. Not fresh, but enough to test. We're rushing it to the lab. Clara's knees buckled, but she caught herself on the table. Owen dropped his pen, his face paling. Is it Mum's? He whispered. Ruiz held up a hand. We don't know yet. Could be Vanessa's trick to scare Laura. We're pulling security footage from the bakery too. Laura worked late yesterday. Might show when Vanessa grabbed her. Clara steadied herself, forcing calm for Owen's sake. What's next? She asked. Ruiz checked her watch. We're searching a storage unit Vanessa rented across town. Found the key in her bag. If Laura's alive, she could be there. I'm heading over now. Clara straightened. Can we come? Owen needs to know. Ruiz hesitated, then nodded. Stay in the car with an officer. It's not safe otherwise. Clara grabbed her keys and Owen stood, his napkin crumpled in his fist. They followed Ruiz outside, climbing into a patrol car with Officer Grant at the wheel. The drive cut through Boise's outskirts, past warehouses and empty lots. The storage facility loomed ahead, a grid of orange doors under harsh floodlights. Police cars already lined the entrance, officers milling around with flashlights. Grant parked near the gate, turning to Clara. Wait here. Radio if you need me. He joined Ruiz, who led a team toward Unit 17, Vanessa's key glinting in her hand. Clara kept the window cracked, listening as the team pried the lock open. Metal clanged and voices shouted. Owen pressed his face to the glass, his breath fogging it up. Then a yell cut through the noise. She's here, call medics! Clara's heart leapt. She gripped Owen's shoulder. They found someone. Moments later, paramedics rushed past, a stretcher rattling behind them. Ruiz emerged, waving Clara over. It's Laura. She's hurt but alive. Clara opened the door, and Owen bolted out, running toward the unit. She chased after him, catching his arm just as paramedics wheeled Laura out. Her face was bruised, her wrists raw from restraints, but her eyes flickered open. Owen? she croaked. He threw himself at her, sobbing into her shoulder. Laura hugged him weakly, tears streaming down her face. Clara stepped back, relief flooding her as medics loaded them into an ambulance. Ruiz approached, wiping sweat from her brow. Vanessa tied her up in there last night. Wanted ransom from Laura's brother Daniel. He's got money from a business. Laura fought back, explains the blood. Clara exhaled, the pieces clicking. Will she be okay? Ruiz nodded. Doctors think so. You saved her, Miss Hensley. Following your gut brought us here. As the ambulance pulled away, Clara watched Owen hold his mum's hand through the window. The night wasn't over. Statements, reports, and healing lay ahead, but for now, they were together. Clara's chest swelled with quiet pride. She trusted her instincts, and it had made all the difference. The ambulance's red lights faded into the Boise night as it sped toward the hospital, carrying Laura and Owen. Clara stood by the storage unit, the cold air biting at her skin. Police officers moved around her, sealing off the area with yellow tape. The orange doors of the facility gleamed under the floodlights, casting stark reflections on the gravel lot. Detective Ruiz finished barking orders to her team and walked over, her boots crunching with each step. You're a hero tonight, Miss Hensley, she said, offering a tired smile. We'll need you at the station for a full statement, but take a moment first. Clara nodded, her breath visible in the chilly air. She glanced at the open Unit 17, where paramedics had found Laura bound and bruised. A folding chair lay tipped over inside, next to a pile of ropes and a spilled water bottle. The sight sent a shiver through her. She'd come so close to losing Owen's mum forever. Ruiz followed her gaze. Vanessa planned this for weeks, she said. Hacked Laura's phone to get the school pin. Fake those papers. She's been watching them. Clara's hands clenched into fists. All for money. Ruiz sighed, rubbing her temple. Money and revenge. Laura's brother Daniel owns a chain of auto shops. Vanessa thought he'd pay big to get Owen back. When Laura caught her breaking in last night, things got ugly. Clara's mind flashed to the blood in the kitchen, the suitcase in the van. She staged it, she realized aloud, made it look worse than it was. Ruiz nodded. Smart guess. Labs confirming the blood's from a cut on Laura's arm, nothing fatal. Vanessa's a con artist, not a killer. Officer Grant approached, holding a radio. Station's ready for you, Ruiz. They're pulling Vanessa's financials now. Looks like she's got debts piled high, motives stacking up. Ruiz turned to Clara. Ride with us. We'll wrap this up tonight. Clara agreed, following them to the patrol car. The drive back was quiet, the city's lights streaking past in a blur. She replayed the day. Owen's hesitation at school, the chase to the yellow house, the storage unit rescue. Each step had led her here. At the station, the clock showed 9:47 p.m. The lobby smelled of burnt coffee and paper. Clara sat in the same small room as before, this time alone. Owen was with Laura at the hospital, safe under police watch. Detective Ruiz entered with a fresh notepad, joined by a younger officer carrying a recorder. Let's get this on record, Ruiz said, starting the device. Clara recounted everything. Spotting Vanessa at pickup, tracking her to the rental, finding Laura's purse, and the final rush to the storage unit. Her voice stayed clear, each detail sharp for the AI voiceover she'd planned. Ruiz scribbled notes, then leaned back. You've got a knack for this, Clara. Ever think about detective work? Clara smiled faintly. I just wanted Owen safe. The younger officer chimed in. You did more than that. Vanessa's confessing now, spilled the whole scheme. Says she panicked when Laura fought back. Locked her in the unit to buy time. Clara's shoulders relaxed slightly. What happens to her? Ruiz tapped her pen. Kidnapping, forgery, assault. She's not walking away. The door opened and Grant poked his head in. Hospital cold, Laura's stable. Cuts and dehydration, but she'll recover. Owen's staying with her. Clara exhaled, a weight lifting. Ruiz shut off the recorder. You're free to go, Clara. We'll contact you if we need more. Clara stood, grabbing her jacket. Can I see them? Ruiz nodded. They're at St. Luke's. I'll have Grant drive you. The ride to St. Luke's Hospital took 20 minutes. Streetlights glowed through the car windows. casting soft patterns on Clara's hands. Grant parked near the entrance, a squat building with glass doors. "They're in room 214, he said. "I'll wait here." Clara thanked him and stepped inside. The lobby was quiet, the receptionist pointing her to the elevators. She rode up, her shoes squeaking on the polished floor as she found the room. Through the door's small window, Clara saw Laura in a hospital bed, an IV dripping into her arm. Owen sat beside her, holding her hand. His backpack rested on the floor, unzipped, revealing the napkin with his drawing. Clara knocked softly and entered. Laura looked up, her bruised face softening. "Miss Hensley," she rasped. Owen turned, eyes bright. "You came!" Clara smiled. "Had to make sure you're okay." Laura gestured weakly to a chair. "Sit. I owe you everything." Clara pulled up the seat, settling in. "I'm just glad you're both safe." Laura's voice trembled. "Vanessa showed up last night, said she needed help. When I let her in, she pulled a knife. I wanted Owen to get to Daniel. I tried to stop her." She trailed off, tears welling. Owen squeezed her hand. "You're tough, Mum." Laura chuckled through the pain. "Not as tough as your teacher." Clara listened as Laura explained more. Vanessa had been a friend once, before the bakery theft soured things. "She got bitter after I turned her in," Laura said. "Started calling, leaving notes. I never thought she'd go this far." Clara nodded, piecing it together. "She fooled us all with that pin." Laura sighed. "She must have watched me use it at school once. I should have been careful." The room grew quiet, the hum of the IV machine filling the space. Owen yawned, his head dipping. Laura brushed his hair back. "He's been so brave." Clara stood. "You both have. Rest now." "I'll check in tomorrow." Laura grabbed her hand. "Thank you, Clara. You didn't give up on us." Her grip was weak but firm. Clara squeezed back. "Never would." She left the room, the door clicking shut behind her. Downstairs, Grant waited, leaning against the patrol car. "All good?" he asked. Clara nodded. "They're strong, they'll make it." He drove her back to her car at the school, the night settling into silence. Clara climbed in, the dashboard clock glowing 11:03 p.m. She sat there, keys in hand, reflecting. A simple hunch had unraveled a web of deceit, saving a family. She started the engine, a quiet resolve settling in. Tomorrow, she'd teach her class, but tonight, she'd made a difference.